Welcome to B-Rate Politics with Radio Guy. Please excuse any foul language or misinterpreted views. Of course, even more limitations in terms of YouTube. But if you'd like to catch a 1 hour podcast Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can check that out over on Patreon. There's a link in the subscription. As I've said, Mondays are always a free podcast, cover a few different topics. Most of the time, they're not really, eventually there are others that will get to them, to the topics, but usually kind of weeks ahead in some ways. But anyways, on the more fun things that have been going on in 2021, I want to talk about, take a few minutes, I want to talk about the Republican strategy. Now, if you've listened to me on my podcast, you'll hear me kind of go on about, the party playbook and what's in the Democrat playbook and what's in the Republican playbook. And usually, if you're in terms of running for an election or so forth, if you're a Republican, you look at the Democrat and go, they are a socialist communist bastard, right? That's one hand. If you're the Democrat, you look at the Republican and you go, that's a sexist, racist pig. Pretty much standard. There you go. And you've now won your election, whatever you decided to run as. For the most part, right? But that's only in terms of elections. Now, what am I referencing in terms of what the Republicans will go to as far as dealing with a Democrat White House and dealing with a Democrat Congress? Pretty much, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And some people are kind of, I kind of warned about this a little bit in terms of if the Republicans had kept control of the Senate, they would have grandstanded. That's what the Republicans, that was the main strategy for President Obama. After 2008, it was kind of like, what the flip are we going to do? Let's just grandstand. Let's just do that. There you go. There's your policy. Doing nothing is actually legit policy. And so what did voters do? Well, they gave Republicans control of the House in 2010 with Speaker Boehner. And then by 2014, of course, they probably could have gotten a little earlier if they hadn't picked certain Senate Republicans. But eventually, the Republicans would gain control of the U.S. Senate in 2014. And of course, then in 2016, we had, the President Trump, and so Republicans were then in control of government. But when the Republicans were running on that, on one hand, they just grandstanded, and the other, and more my favorite one, as someone who legitimately believes in fiscal responsibility, and probably more the second point of this whole video, is the Republicans will finally find their fiscal values. You have to kind of enjoy it when they do. It really only ever appears during when there's a donkey in the White House. So, enjoy to a degree. The second point of what Republicans are going to do, which they're going to talk a lot about the deficit, they're going to talk a lot about the debt. I guess I could have put that up here. That would have been kind of nice. We could watch the debt rack up as I'm giving all this whole spiel. Well, if you're ever curious about the debt, you can go on to usdebtclock.org. There you go. Is it completely accurate? No, but it gives you the overall point, which is the debt is going up. I think this past year we had like a $3.2 trillion deficit. Multi-trillion dollar deficits for this country will become the norm. This is not unavoidable, as some people kind of like to toss this idea out there. It was forthcoming. Just would have been years later. But certain parties, sped it up a little bit for us. So now the fun really does begin. But that's the whole point. The Republicans right now, they're like, Well, crap. We got rewarded Congress for essentially doing nothing and going on and on and on about debts. Let's just do it again. And so we're already starting to see that. In fact, the new Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, who is in by no way a neo of any sort, you know, working with the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, who is also in by no means any type of neo. These two can't really come to an agreement on Senate rules. And so that's why you have Senate Republicans still chairing the committees, because there is no set rules for the coming for this new Congress, for this new Senate. The sticking point for McConnell is that I want, okay, fine, we'll go with what we did back in 2000 when the Senate was split 50-50. But I want to add one thing to it, which is to say the Democrats basically aren't going to change the filibuster. And so that's kind of the sticking point. Well, Democrats don't want to do that because, in their way, that's their leverage, even though Republicans know, and even a number of Democrats, for example, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, has even said, I'm not going to undo the filibuster, at least not right now at this point, as some people like to throw in there. The reality of it is the Democrats don't have the votes to completely undo the filibuster. Of course, at this point, the filibuster is kind of another useless tool once it started to become unraveled. Plus, it pretty much had gotten abused back during the Obama administration. We had a certain, whoever was the minority party really loved really loved using the filibuster. So, case in point. But in these new times that we are now entering in the Biden era, that's what the Republicans are going to do. They're going to grandstand and they're going to talk about the debt. And like I said, I think the latter is more interesting. As someone who I do pride myself on fiscal responsibility, but I've really never known it to come from the Republicans. Just not really something a quality. That's a quality people like to assign them, but it's like how they up defense spending. They give their numbers when it comes to truly racking up government spending still grew under President Trump. Even before COVID hit, we were already racking up $1 trillion deficits. Now we've just hit this idea of multi-trillion dollars. I can remember back in, I think the worst of it was like 2010, when the deficit under President Obama reached about $1.4 trillion in 1 year. People were pissed then. Of course, now, under President Trump, that's very different. It doesn't count. We got to spend in defense. We got to spend in all these government programs in general, and ensure that certain companies get a break. It's like yes, I fully remember the starving times of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and anyone else. Warren Buffett. Bill Gates. Anyone else you want to throw on that list. Times are tough right now, and they really are. For everybody, not so much. But, case in point, just remember, as we move ahead over the coming weeks and even over the next couple of years, it's going to be grandstanding. People thought government was kind of stalled with McConnell in the Senate as majority leader. It's going to, in my opinion, still stall worse than what you saw under President Obama. The Republicans have no incentive to want to work with Joe Biden. Even if you want to throw in, we'll throw in Mitt Romney, or, they'll throw in, Mitt Romney or Susan Collins or whoever, these more quote unquote moderate Republicans, But in general, to kind of keep this video short, just keep that in mind. That's going to be what that is the Republican playbook, and when they're dealing with a Democrat White House, that's pretty much their answer. So we'll find out what happens as we move ahead. But as I've said, it's going to be a lot of grandstanding, going to be slow as hell, and on top of it, and the more interesting of all of this, is talk about the deficit. And I will leave y'all with that. Again, you can always, if you would like to hear me more, you can always hear me on Patreon. Again, free Monday podcasts for about an hour, cover 3 topics. And at the same time, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I at least like to do a video a week. Sometimes I do 2, but it just depends. This past week kind of got away from me, so I figured, hey, gotta kind of throw one. This was something I wanted to talk about as we, move into the new administration. Was waiting to see what happens with the coup. I didn't, want to throw more information out there and be like, and ruin my chances of, being considered for Fed chair maybe. Anyways, as we, move forward, just keep that in mind. Government's going to be slow. Government's going to be to a halt because that's the Republican strategy. In the mind of the Republicans, that worked. You gave them the House in 2010, you gave them the Senate in 2014, and hell, you gave them the presidency in 2016. Exactly. That's what they're going to do. And jabber on and on and on about the debt and deficits. And it's like, well, what about Trump? What about Bush? What about Reagan? Those don't count. If you're only going to half-ass your political views, then are they really political views and values that you really care about? Probably not. But I'll leave that with y'all. Hopefully you have a great day, and I'll see y'all again hopefully later this week. Thanks again for listening to B-Rate Politics with Radio Guy.